Sí, sí. De hecho, esa cúpula que lleva arriba, mira, ahí vemos esa imagen que se repite. Lamentándolo mucho, que se repite. Sí. Esto no es la primera vez que sucede. Es lamentable lo que sucede el día de hoy. Han sido arrollados algunas personas en la...
Hello and welcome to Inside the Americas. Here's what's coming up in this week's show. We're going to take you to meet some members of Venezuela's high society, whose lifestyles would be completely unimaginable for so many of their compatriots. And it might be one of the most dangerous countries on earth to be a reporter, but that's not stopping investigative journalists in Mexico from doing their job and winning awards along the way. Plus, marking 100 years since the birth of Eva Perón, we find out more about how the life of this 20th century icon is being celebrated in Argentina. We begin in Venezuela, a country in the grip of the worst economic and political crisis in its history, where hyperinflation and power blackouts are making daily life even more unbearable for a population already suffering from chronic food shortages. But despite the country's descent into chaos, some younger sections of Venezuelan society are still managing to live life to the full, and at the same time, they're doing their bit to help out. France 24's 𝘊𝘪𝘷𝘪𝘭 explains.
It could be London, Paris or New York. But this party is being held in Caracas. For a young generation with money to spend, most rich Venezuelans have already fled abroad. But these 30-somethings refuse to abandon their country.
If we leave, who will fight to get our country back on its feet again?
A stylist is hosting tonight's party. In a country where the average wage for a government worker is only $6 a month, her $45 T-shirts are an unimaginable luxury for most people.
Aren't you ashamed of such flamboyance in the midst of a crisis?
No, on the contrary. We mustn't all plunge into sadness. Otherwise, we'll never pull through.
Those lucky enough to come from Venezuela's upper class live and work here in eastern Caracas. There are no slums here, only a business district. And there are bodegones everywhere, shops full of imported goods impossible to find elsewhere. To buy luxury goods like these, only dollars will do. Victor is part of Venezuela's high society. He supports the opposition to Nicolás Maduro's regime and hopes for a better future for his country. As a luxury property dealer, he's been hard hit by the economic crisis.
Lots of businessmen who earned $30,000 per month only earn about $1,000 now. The revenues are in free fall. Yet we're in a country rich with petrol, and the business potential should be huge.
Most Venezuelans spend on average 4 hours every day standing in line just to feed themselves. Basic ingredients like flour and sugar are nowhere to be found. Moved by the sight of so much poverty, Victor decided to set up a charity to bring food to the slums of Caracas. Several of his friends, from the upper class like him, are also helping out. Twice a week, they deliver 200 dinners to children and old people, many of whom suffer from malnutrition.
I'm here helping to make arepas. It feels good to help.
The volunteers have no trouble threading their way through the city's poorest and most dangerous neighborhood. Before the crisis, these youths would never have ventured here. But now they're welcomed. For these children, it's their only full meal of the day. It's also an opportunity to spend time with grown-ups. The meal is filmed from every angle. And the charity's members, lawyers, television hosts, comedians are all social media savvy.
We put these clips on social media. That helps us collect donations. People see how their money is used. That's brought the charity to life in 2 months.
State aid is virtually non-existent. But in Venezuela, solidarity is sacred, and initiatives like Victor's are spreading to stem the humanitarian emergency.
Venezuela says it has arrested 27 members of the country's National Guard accused of launching an uprising against the government of President Nicolas Maduro. They allegedly stole weapons from a security post in the capital, Caracas, and took 4 officers hostage before making their way to Cotiza in the early hours of Monday. The military said all weapons have since been retrieved. The suspects had posted videos online saying they won't recognize Maduro's government and that they were acting on behalf of the Venezuelan people. Maduro was sworn in for a second term earlier this month, which the opposition-controlled Congress in the country, as well as many other nations, claim is the result of an illegitimate election.
Undeterred by security forces, participants of Venezuela's resurgent insurrection movement flood the streets of Caracas. It's the first time protesters have demonstrated against Nicolas Maduro's government in months, and they're in it for the long haul. They insist they'll continue protesting until the Venezuelan leader gives up his hold on power.
We won't leave the streets until Maduro leaves. We'll do whatever it takes, even destroy everything. We can't take it anymore.
We want a free country. We want youth to see how they repress us with tear gas. They are silencing us. Let all the people of Venezuela and other countries know what's happening so that they can intervene to help us. We just want to produce. We don't want to go down the wrong path.
The renewed wave of protests has drawn hundreds of thousands of people across Venezuela. It began on Monday after a group of soldiers rose up against Nicolas Maduro. Though the police quickly put an end to the revolt, it empowered anti-government demonstrators. Different from past demonstrations, observers say this round has gathered a more diverse group. Much of the protesting has occurred in working-class neighborhoods of the capital, once bastions of support for Maduro. Further energizing their movement, new opposition leader and head of the National Assembly, Juan Guaido. He declared himself acting president of Venezuela on Wednesday, to the cheers of enthusiastic supporters.
We're happy. Our president is Guaido, Juan Guaido, and no one else. He's the only one we recognize.
Guaido has promised to oversee the transition to a new government, insisting he has the Constitution on his side. But it may not be enough. Guaido will need support from the military, which has thus far refused to back him.
Bajen las armas, únanse. Venezuela lo necesita. Al pueblo, a los que lo determinaron, a nosotros, al pueblo, a llevar su país.
En la avenida Páez de El Paraíso, luego de que la Guardia Nacional, que está al fondo, los reprimiera cuando intentaban concentrarse en la Plaza Madariaga, uno de los puntos elegidos por la oposición para marchar este 23.
Today, the streets of Venezuela's capital erupted into chaos once again. The authorities brutally suppressed the uprising, even running over protesters with an armored truck. More than 50 people have been injured. This time, it isn't just civilians showing their anger at President Nicolás Maduro. A number of soldiers defected to the opposition and attempted to stage a coup. The defectors wore blue armbands and traded fire with the National Guard. Protesters are answering a call from Juan Guaidó, the opposition leader who declared himself president in January. This morning, he said from a military base that this was the final phase in his plan to overthrow Maduro.
Los invito inmediatamente a activarse. Los invito inmediatamente a cubrir las calles de Venezuela. El 1 de mayo empezó hoy. El cese definitivo de la usurpación empezó hoy.
Guaidó was there with his mentor, Leopoldo López, the longtime face of the opposition, who has spent the last 5 years between prison and house arrest. Until this morning, when he says he was freed by soldiers.
Está la mayoría de los hombres y mujeres de uniforme están conscientes de que tiene que haber un cambio en Venezuela. Y les hacemos ese llamado a todos para que se sumen a este proceso, un proceso de unificación de la Fuerza Armada con el pueblo venezolano. Muchas gracias.
López and his family have since taken refuge in the home of the Chilean ambassador in Caracas. The coup attempt has the enthusiastic backing of the U.S., especially Trump's national security advisor, John Bolton.
If this effort fails, they will sink into a dictatorship from which there are very few possible alternatives.
Maduro hasn't shown his face today. On Twitter, he said the coup has been defeated and that most of the armed forces remain loyal. If Maduro does remain in power, it's unlikely that Guaidó will be a free man for long. We spoke to Guaidó. He was aware of the risks.
¿Ustedes están haciendo algo para prepararse para esa posible eventualidad?
Para
la posible eventualidad de que usted termine arrestado.
Es una posibilidad. En Venezuela el ejercicio de la política está criminalizado, no solamente de la política, del periodismo, de las libertades sindicales, de disentir, sencillamente de agarrar una cacerola y sonarla cercano al centro de Caracas, enviaron paramilitares armados. Así que es una posibilidad latente, hay que estar preparados en torno a los objetivos, que es generar una transición pacífica en Venezuela que nos lleve a una elección realmente libre luego del cese de la usurpación.
Por ahora, Maduro se ha aferrado al poder. A mí, por lo menos, no me parece que hay una nueva estrategia clara por parte de la oposición. ¿Cómo ve usted el futuro? ¿Cómo ve el camino?
¿Cuál debe ser la ruta? Insistir. O sea, podría sonar trillado, pero la verdad la ruta cuando enfrentamos a una dictadura con la no violencia, con la Constitución, con la movilización, nuestra gran defensa, nuestra gran posibilidad de avance es continuar con una ruta muy clara.
Venezuela is once again at a crossroad. The coup won't succeed without bloodshed. And if it fails, Maduro will only tighten his authoritarian grip. What seems less likely than ever is a peaceful transition.
That's why my administration reversed the failing policies of the previous administration on Cuba. We are supporting the hopes of Cubans, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans to restore democracy. The United States is leading a 59-nation diplomatic coalition against the socialist dictator of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro. Maduro is an illegitimate ruler, a tyrant who brutalizes his people, but Maduro's grip on tyranny will be smashed and broken. Here this evening is a very brave man who carries with him the hopes, dreams, and aspirations of all Venezuelans. Joining us in the gallery is the true and legitimate president of Venezuela, Juan Guaidó. Mr. President, please take this message back to your family. Thank you, Mr. President. Great honor. Thank you very much. Please take this message back that all Americans are united with the Venezuelan people in their righteous struggle for freedom. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you very much.